So I'm very happy to report that the Catholic Church in Britain is showing strong signs of health. MP Chris Coughlin voted for the assisted suicide bill.
Good.
He was told by his priest that if he persisted in doing so, he would be obstinately committing grave sins, and this would cost him communion. He would no longer be able to receive communion. What this means, for those of you who don't know, the Catholics receive the body and blood of Christ in the Eucharist at every Mass. That's the center of Catholic life, really. And you can't receive it if you are in a state of mortal sin. You should stop yourself from receiving it. But if this sin is public, the Church is allowed to deny you communion.
Absolutely.
The celebrant, the priest at the Mass, is allowed to say, no, you can get a blessing, but you can't receive communion anymore.
Yes.
And so a priest decided to go ahead and do this. And the MP in question, rather than reacting with a modicum of humility and with a modicum of contrition, thinking, I recognize that I belong to the Church, and I recognize that I am not the moral authority here, the Church is, which is what every Catholic should believe, he decides that no, he's going to try to shame the priest for doing so. And the argument there is that it is a matter of grave public interest, the extent to which religious MPs came under pressure to represent their religion and not necessarily their constituents in the assisted dying vote.
No?
A couple of points here. Firstly, you are a man living a public life. You are meant to lead, not follow.
Yes.
So you are meant to exercise your own conscience, informed by your beliefs, and convince your constituents that this is the correct choice. So saying merely the public wants this and I will follow through with it, that's not leadership. No. That's not being a man. No more than letting your children have all of the sugar that they want and watch all the television that they want is being a good parent. This isn't how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to explain to your public and to your constituents what is informing your decision making. So just because the public says that they want this doesn't mean that you should do it, firstly. Secondly, there's absolutely no evidence that the public wanted the NHS to be turned into a murder service.
No.
And that's a sort of important point. And then he goes on to say, this was utterly disrespectful to my family, my constituents, including the congregation, and the democratic process. My private religion will continue to have zero direct relevance to my work as an MP. Hold on a second. For every Muslim in Parliament, their religion pretty much fully informs everything that they do. In Parliament.
But then they're representing an entirely Muslim base.
But they're representing
so there's no contradiction for them. And those who are not,
sometimes they're representing a 40% Muslim constituency.
Right, but
because
that's
the
the
way
part they care
voting
about.
breaks down, so it's not that's not exactly accurate.
I noticed you say you deserve this, may be instructive to you for the judgment. I'd rather that I would like you to also do exactly what you've just done. Take this clip that we've just had now and put that on there as well, and make him try and understand that as a Catholic, you are not the moral authority.
Exactly.
It is God, it is the Church that is the moral authority, and as a Catholic, you have to take those principles and either accept them and push them forward, or say you're not a Catholic.
You have both choices.
You have both choices.
You have both choices available to you. You can pick which one you prefer.
Yeah.
And it seems that the reason this guy goes to a Catholic church is because his children go to a Catholic school.
That's right.
And so admissions to a Catholic school are helped by attending Mass regularly.
Right.
Because, surprise, surprise, Catholic schools actually want to teach Catholics. What a shock, I know. The injustice of it all. And that's the reason that he's there.
Yeah.
But he's basing his argument completely on liberal perspectives. And he doesn't seem to get what this is all about.
Nope.
And so who came out to support him? Well, obviously, Kim Ledbetter came out to support him.
She a Catholic?
Absolutely not. She's the one responsible for the assisted suicide bill. And she says...
What is this MP? Is he a Lib Dem MP?
He's a Lib Dem MP.
Oh, you can't be a Lib Dem.
He's a Lib Dem MP, yes.
Be a Lib Dem and a Catholic. Sorry.
You could under a different time, but at a time where the Lib Dems celebrate
3077, something
and,
like that.
and abortion on demand and all of that, obviously not. And Mrs. Ledbetter says, religious leaders and people of faith have every right to communicate their views to their MPs and to Parliament as a whole, but this is totally unacceptable, this being him being denied communion. Why? Why doesn't the Catholic Church get to set its own rules? I don't understand. And it's not like the guy did anything that is out of what Catholicism teaches. I want to read a couple of things here, and I'm sorry this is going to take some time, but I think it's important. This is from Evangelium Vitae, an encyclical by Saint John Paul II, Saint Pope John Pope II. And it's called the Gospel of Life. You know, the Gospel of Life is at the heart of Jesus' message. Lovingly received day after day by the Church, it is to be preached with dauntless fidelity. So your duty is to preach what the Church teaches, not what you believe. That's step one. When he presents the heart of his redemptive mission, Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. The fundamental principle animating the Catholic Church is respect for life, and the idea of the dignity of human life and the worthiness of human life, with its diversity, with its differences, with its nations, with its states, with its different classes, yes. But the principle animating it is that although we are not equal in our capabilities or in what we do in life, we are equal in dignity before God.
Yeah. Am I to understand it right as well, from what I remember, that also it's strictly forbidden to take your own life?
Absolutely.
Under Christian doctrine.
It's strictly forbidden to take your own life, and it's strictly forbidden to take the life of the innocents.
And so it's not just about his own conscience and his own support as an MP, but surely as a Catholic also he's then, under his own metaphysics, denying them salvation by passing legislation that would prohibit them from being able to do it.
That's the scandalous part.
Yes.
So the Church strongly objects to anything that causes scandal in the public. As in, your private sins and your public sins are not the same. Because if you commit certain sins in public, you are normalizing this evil. And you are encouraging others who have less responsibility than you, who are living less of a public life than you, to actually pursue sin. And so you're not just sinning personally, which is bad enough, and we're all guilty of it, yours truly included. It's that you are encouraging others to commit sin.
Yeah.
That's what makes it particularly bad. Man is called to a fullness of life which far exceeds the dimensions of his earthly existence, because it consists in sharing the very life of God. The loftiness of the supernatural vocation reveals the greatness and the inestimable value of human life, even in its temporal phase.
Absolutely. So this is very clear, isn't it?
This is as clear as it gets. And this was written 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it continues. The sacred value of human life from its very beginning until its end. Life is sacred from the start, from conception until natural death. That's always been the Catholic position. Nobody came up with anything new. Nobody sort of sprung a surprise on Chris here and sort of, we've changed our minds. No, we've never changed our minds about this.
No. Yeah, the Pope's just come out from behind a screen and said, hey,
exactly.
We've only just said we don't like abortion.
And here we go.
Oh, by the way, and killing people. Suicide. Not really one of our bags, mate, to be honest. What do you think about it, Chris?
It's really just the arrogance of it is...
Yeah. It's just
the lack of humility. In a special way, believers in Christ must defend and promote this right to life, that is, aware as they are of the wonderful truth recalled by the Second Vatican Council. By his incarnation, the Son of God has united himself in some fashion with every human being. This is the emphasis on the sacredness of all human life. That's the animating principle of Christianity. Christ came down to earth to share in our suffering, out of an abundance of love for us, for each individual. And every few weeks in the homily, we get reminded again that you can't just be a Catholic on Sunday. You have to be a Catholic every day of the week.
That's right.
So when this gentleman says, I will completely separate my Catholic faith from my day job, hold on a second.
You can't.
Like, that's... Have you listened at any of the homilies you've received recently?
I don't think he has. I think he was brought up a Catholic, probably taken into church, and he's seen this now as a political opportunity for two reasons. One, I'm a Catholic, and therefore I might get voters from these areas who are Catholics, and B, probably more important, I'm going to stay in this because my kids can get a nice education.
That's pretty much it.
And actually, he doesn't really believe in Catholicism in any way.
If you believe in eternal life, if you believe that there is a hell and that there is a real possibility of damnation, you don't go around encouraging people to commit suicide and making it easier and allowing people to commit suicide just because they feel like a burden, which is precisely what this bill does.
Yeah. Yes. It ignores the clauses, as all the things I went through. Disgusting clauses that could have been included, such as, I will not allow you to say I want to kill myself because I'm a burden on my family, or that my housing is inefficient for what I'm living in. No, you don't allow that, but they still voted them down. They are basically voting for murder.
Pretty much.
And I disagreed with them completely on this. I think there is a nastiness that runs through their core, hiding behind
fake compassion.
The compassion and misery for people who are genuinely suffering ill and genuinely suffering. And I know that I've had a discussion with a couple of people about this. Those people are genuinely suffering.
Absolutely.
But you don't actually help them by introducing a law that will enable those who may not be suffering in the same way to end it earlier. And
it's a very sinister bill.
Sinister.
It's not just that. It's that the cross of Jesus has meaning because God glorified suffering. Because God elevated suffering and gave us a pathway to sublimating it. This is the story of Job. This is from the Old Testament. This is also the story of Christ, that you must suffer. Abraham had to offer his only son, his only legitimate son. So the idea that suffering denies a right to life is fundamentally against both the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's against the covenantal relationship that we have with God, where we bear our burdens and we bear our cross in order to participate in eternal life with Christ. And this is, I'm a very ignorant Catholic. I'm a very stupid Catholic. I only recently years ago.
A lot of us are.
Fine, but this is elementary. And in this the Evangelium Vitae, St. John Paul II talks about the way in which life is slowly being cheapened and new evils are coming to sort of threaten life, aside from the old traditional ones of war and pestilence and famine and all of that. And he says, unfortunately, this disturbing state of affairs, far from decreasing, is expanding. With new prospects opened up by scientific and technological progress, there arise new forms of attacks on the dignity of the human being. At the same time, a new cultural climate is developing. This is 30 years ago. And taking hold, which gives crimes against life a new and, if possible, even more sinister character, what you were saying, giving rise to further grave concern. Broad sectors of public opinion justify certain crimes against life in the name of the rights of individual freedom, which was precisely the argument being made in support of that bill. So these words must be seen as prophetic. And on this basis, they claim not only exemption from punishment, but even authorization by the state, so that these things can be done with total freedom and indeed with the free assistance of healthcare systems.
Yes.
So the church was warning against this a generation ago.
Yes.
And this encyclical was made, again, in 1995. And you're going fully against it. And you're saying that the priest is wrong to deny you communion? I don't understand. I
think he should
don't understand
be, but
the mindset.
I would have gone further. I'd have gone to every Catholic that there should be a message sent down by Westminster. Well, this is what should happen. I would have said that this is the bishops did do an opposition of it. At least they did, rather than the Church of England that was still promoting, I think, some party in York Cathedral on the day. They ignored it.
Yep.
But this needs to be taken much more seriously by the Pope and by the Vatican. They need to be sending messages off that people like Joe Biden should not be allowed communion.
No.
You either are a Catholic or you're not.
Exactly.
And these are our principles. And if you're not...
It's not a costume. No, it's not a skin suit.
No. Yeah.
Exactly. The end result of this is tragic, again from the encyclical. Not only is the fact of the destruction of so many human lives still to be borne, or in their final stage, extremely grave and disturbing, but no less grave and disturbing is the fact that conscience itself, darkened as it were by such widespread conditioning, the normalization of this evil, is finding it increasingly difficult to distinguish between good and evil in what concerns the basic value of human life. Yeah. Now, the encyclical also mentions the demographic problems that this causes, and the destruction of nations, and the damage to peoples that is caused by this. Yeah. So the culture of death was being attacked by the church generations ago. And the church has always emphasized the same exact teaching, and has dismantled the argument that says, no, I have a right to die whenever I want to. This has been church teaching for forever.
Yeah.
And then this guy says, well, how dare you deny me communion? Come on. The conditions under which you can be denied communion, according to canon law, are pretty simple.
Move it further to the right. There you go.
Yeah. Are pretty simple.
Yeah.
And it's there in, this is going to take me a while to get to, in 915.
There we are. Just nearly there.
And it says,
I haven't read this.
Those who have been excommunicated or interdicted after the imposition or declaration of the penalty, that's one category, and others obstinately persevering in manifest grave sin, are not to be admitted to Holy Communion. How strange. The church is enforcing its rules.
It's there in black and white.
It's just right there. It's just right there. And there's no argument about it. It's not, unless you're an MP. There's no opt-out clause that's...
No.
Actually, it's literally the opposite.
Unless you're a human rights lawyer.
Unless you're a human rights lawyer.
Yeah.
Unless you're Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It's literally the opposite. If the more public you are, the more important it is to impose sanction on you because you are causing scandal to the faithful.
Yep.
If somebody is looking into Catholicism and sees that the church is being lax on its teachings, he will be less enthusiastic. If someone has faith but is doubting, and we all have moments of doubt, that kind of behavior will make it much worse.
Do we think that the current Pope and the Vatican that he is building around him is going to be that type of Pope that is willing to utilize clauses like this by messaging the archbishops, by getting it out to the bishops, by getting it out to the priests, that politicians across the European countries and the West, and I include Australia and New Zealand and Canada in this, and in particular the United States, are going to receive this level of kind of the ramifications of their actions should be that they can't get Holy Communion. Because I remember when they did this with Biden, after what he did, that they still allowed him to do so because they didn't want to be embarrassed, or because he's the president.
Because
surely the president is not above God, he's not above the church, and therefore they should be standing strong on this. Is this president that type of president?
I sincerely hope so. He's an Augustinian.
Yeah.
He's a scholar.
It's this type of Pope, I mean.
He's very much strong enough in terms of his personal faith. There's an issue here whereby the church tries to avoid to be seen to be interfering in politics. And the way that it works is that if you say we're going to enforce this in the United States, you've pretty much banned the Democratic Party from receiving communion, given their extremism on abortion.
Yeah.
We are called to think with the church, never against the church. And so I think that since this conflict is happening, we might as well have it. The conflict has been forced upon us. We weren't, we didn't choose this fight. It was forced on us.
Yeah.
Here we are.
When you set
and the church is meant to be a sign of contradiction to the world.
This is the rules. This is what we believe in.
Exactly.
If you don't believe in it, then you're not a Catholic.
It offers permanence in an ever-changing world.
Yeah.
Like the permanent moral instruction.
Yes.
That is always good and is always evil in every age.
Yes. Exactly.
And you can't fight back if you're not going to do anything about it. If you just ignore it, one of the biggest lessons that we learned from anyone challenging you is
nothing can be ignored.
Nothing can be ignored anymore.
Correct. Yeah, you can't ignore anything. All right, shall we go through the comments then?
You got the discipline regarding.
That people who are in the reading the notes can see it. This is a letter from Archbishop Raymond Burke, who's one of the great American conservatives.
Okay.
And he explains why Catholics believe that the blood and wine are the bread and wine are literally the flesh and blood of Christ, and the burden that this imposes on everyone. And he explains that in cases of outward conduct which is seriously, clearly, and steadfastly contrary to the moral norm, the Church, in her pastoral concern for the good order of the community, and out of respect for the sacrament, cannot fail to feel directly involved. The Code of Canon Law allows us basically to deny communion to people who are, seriously, clearly, and steadfastly. So the priest here, the priest in question, wrote to the MP, spoke publicly, warned him, and made it clear that there will be consequences.
Yeah.
And the MP refused to listen.
Yeah.
And now, behold the consequences of my own actions. Yeah. How dare they impose consequences on me? I should be above the law. Don't you see the letters MP behind my name? Yeah. Like anybody would know who he was if this hadn't happened to him. And he's trying to use it as a publicity stunt instead of showing any kind of contrition, any kind of humility.
Yeah, well, I'd quite like to see him excommunicated, but there we go.
Let's hope it doesn't go that far for his own sake. I want us to pray for him at the end of the day and to pray for his penance. It's our responsibility. We want more people in the church, not less.
No, I accept.
But it has to be the church.
I accept that.
Yes.
But
it's not a social club.
You're dealing with.
It's the Church of God.
Yeah, but you're dealing with liberal Democrats. And to be honest, they're unrepentable. To be honest, I'm sorry, they are just. I'm sorry. I don't think anyone's a liberal Democrat watching this, but they. Well, what more can I say?
We can pray for them.
Okay,
we can.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.